Hey everybody, Jim Ingersoll here. Hope everybody's doing really well during the pandemic, and you're really set up to make the second half of 2020 a lot better than the first half. Many states are still going through lockdown, and we got all kinds of crisis. We got 40 million people unemployed. So what are the new opportunities? What are the challenges? What are the blind spots? How do you prepare right now for what's going to come? And I think all of that's going to lead into an amazing show today for you with my guest Jim coming to us from Lockdown, Michigan, where we are going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is options. I really think right now is a great time to do options. They give you the right, the right to close, but you don't have to close. So it's like, I think, the best of all worlds. Thanks everybody who's been sharing our content, all of the questions, comments, both in iTunes and in YouTube. You guys are all awesome. Excuse me. And so when you think about positioning yourself in today's environment where things are crazy and out of control, I can't think of a better position than to control houses, to control assets without actually owning them. Gives you the right, but not the obligation. Just let that sink in while we get this going. Let me tell you about our guest today, because he's a recovering engineer like I am, and just an overall great guy. We even share the same name, Jim. So Jim Aydelotte, how do you say your last name again?
Aydelotte, like you ate a lot for lunch.
I didn't want to say it wrong. Jim Aydelotte is a real estate professional who absolutely specializes in lease options. And he's built an extensive portfolio there in rural Michigan, all part-time. And when he was in the corporate world like me, he was an engineer. He was a magnetic engineer. I was an electrical engineer. So we kind of share that in common. Jim also, after 22 years working in the corporate world, in 2006 walked away. It happens to be the exact same year I walked away. So we got all these things in common. He walked away from corporate America and went into ministry, which I loved. Jim and I share a deep faith in God, and we could talk openly about that before we even hit record today. And so we have similar core values, and we have similar beliefs on where we're at in the market, and we have similar backgrounds in math and science, and we have an amazing connection with a passion in real estate. And Jim has been able to help many, many people begin depositing $5,000 to $15,000 into their checking accounts, doing the same thing. He teaches and learned with the amazing Wendy Patton. I've never personally met Wendy, Jim, but I have read her books, and she has really made an impact on a lot of people, like you have also, brother. So with over 250 transactions over those 14 or 15 years, and well over $20 million of deals in rural Michigan, Jim has been teaching creative structure and options for a long time. He's also a national speaker and mentor. He's coming to us for Dealmaker 21, and I'm super excited about doing that. Please give a warm welcome today. And Jim, welcome to our podcast. It's nice to be with you again.
Thank you, Jim. Great to be with you and to see you again, and really thrilled to be able to share some insights with you about what we're doing today.
So when I think about options, I think about the right but not the obligation. And in today's environment, why does that make sense?
Actually, it makes more sense now than ever before, would be the way that I would look at it. It's always made sense for me because a lot of people who get started in real estate investing, they really don't have a lot of money to invest. And there's a common misconception out there that people have to have a lot of money to invest in real estate. I was very successful in the corporate world, much like yourself. I was making six figures and didn't have any time to myself, constantly traveling and kowtowing to the corporate world. And I was really tired of that. But I did not have a lot of money still. It comes with the territory. You spend what you make if you're not a good steward. And I wish I knew then what I know now. But getting started in real estate, it became the real niche for me because I could control properties and control real estate with little to zero money. And that also eliminated my risk. And I'm very glad I did start that 14, 15 years ago. The upshot today is that while we're in this current really unstable environment, we're going to see a lot of people who are going to want to have debt relief as sellers, but don't want to pony the cash or use any credit or even private money to do that. We want to be able to control those properties. When I started real estate investing in '06, we know what happened in '07, '08, going into even 2010, 2011. I bought more houses then than most people around me, even in our real estate investment club. We just made just a ton of property control, ton of property that caused us to generate a large, substantial income that allowed me to step away when I did from the corporate world. And I've continued that philosophy today. We actually have several properties in the last 4 to 5 months that has cashed us out on the back end of an option agreement after several years. My students, and maybe some of them will be watching who are on my coaching, actually know that just last year, 3 transactions on the back end netted us $250,000
Wow.
in profits. And I didn't do anything else. I did nothing else to do those deals. They were all under contract, and we see them through. So the time right now is to get involved in real estate investing, because we're going to see a major shakeup in the market. And how that's going to play out, I don't know, but we've got a lot of indicators that there's going to be a tremendous amount of forbearance that's going to be taking place. We'll see how that plays out. We're going to see a lot of job loss. And as banks begin to tighten up their restrictions on lending and what they're able to do in terms of their policies, that means there's going to be a far more greater number of tenant buyers that are looking to do rent to own, and that's on the other end. So I think what we have is a perfect storm. We literally have a perfect storm right now, and it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, I agree. There's going to be tremendous opportunities. I mean, we have 40 million people that are hurting and are unemployed right now. We have so many commercial businesses are filing bankruptcy. I mean, every week you hear about it, and it's all different types. It's hospitality, it's restaurants, the haircuttery, Gold's Gym. I mean, there's just so many. It's truly unbelievable, but that's also going to create brand new opportunity. So how do you describe an option on the front end? Like when you're going to acquire real estate, let's talk about acquiring real estate by controlling it instead of owning it. How does it work?
Sure. So the particulars about that are actually very simple. When we enter into a contract with the seller, we are agreeing to do one of 2 things. If we stay in the deal or not stay in the deal, there are 2 distinctions there. Let's talk about staying in the deal, because I believe that's where the longer term profits are going to be based on the current market conditions. What we're looking at is being able to put a property under contract at an amount that allows us to have some equity in the property, and we gain that equity by negotiating terms. When we do that, we agree to make monthly payments. Those payments typically are going to cover the seller's mortgage payment, including taxes and insurance. We then can move the property at a higher amount, gaining a profit there and cash flowing it for more per month than we're paying the seller or the mortgage company per month. Now, when we enter into that contract, we basically are signing a lease purchase agreement. We are leasing the property with the right to purchase, but not the obligation. Yeah. So if something were to go south on the deal, I can give a seller a 30-day notice and let them have the property back, and we're out of it in case something really goes bad. I've never had to do that at all. And so in 15 years, we've been able to see through every one of our contracts to the end. When we put a property under contract, we are basically just controlling that property with a document, and that document is the lease purchase agreement. And that's basically as simple as it is.
Okay, so one document, and I can tell you, I did some lease options before the crash last time. You and I both went through the last crash, right? So I did some, and I did give those properties back um, at some point. I don't remember when, but even though I didn't collect on the equity side, I had really good cash flow for probably 5 years. And so again, it gives you the right, but not the obligation. Think about it. I controlled those properties with a lease option agreement for like 5 years. On a sandwich lease, basically, master lease,
Yeah.
rented them out, and I had the right to buy them, but not the obligation. So at the end of the agreement, literally, because of what happened, during the last recession, I was able to very easily exit. There was no issue. And the people were thankful that I stepped in for those years that I did.
Yep.
So it's the right, but not the obligation. And that's what makes it so powerful. That's a huge leverage point. You don't need a mortgage. You don't need money. And it's an easy way to start out. It's just, you just got to get out there and do it. And I think the point right now in our market is really critical to go out and do some of these.
Yeah.
So you like to go out with, when you're acquiring property, one document, lease option purchase, right?
Correct.
Not two documents.
No, with my buyer
Great.
or with the seller side, I like to have everything in one document. That gives me a little bit greater control than having them separated. That's one distinction that I learned a little bit differently from others. Now, that's different on the tenant buyer side. We have three documents with the tenant buyer. We can get to that. But that single document, I want it to have the greatest amount of leverage as it appears to be an owner financing arrangement, even though it's an option agreement. And that's where the distinction for me is. If something was to happen where the seller was to flame out, I actually have the ability to go back and regain control of that property. We also will put on file with the county a memorandum of option saying that we have an interest in this property, and that kind of gives us the ability to not have that property sold out from under us and protect us from other issues as well.
Well, you touched on a lot of great points there so flawlessly and so easily, but let's go back to some of the pushbacks some people are thinking is like, if I don't own the property, then I don't get all the benefits of owning property. Well, you also don't get the liability, by the way, but really a lease option to me, Jim, is seller financing in disguise. It's like stealth mode seller financing. And people will push back and they'll say, well, I don't get any amortization. But the truth is you get a rent credit, and that rent credit can kick in faster than amortization. Do you agree?
Right. Absolutely. In fact, I prefer that than just accommodating myself with some small amount of equity in the pay down. Sometimes we do them both, though. I actually have a deal that's cashing us out where 7 years ago I put a $250,000 property, and for some that's not a big amount, but that's a 20-acre horse farm in our county, so that's a larger valued property for me. We're cashing out actually next week. After 7.5 years of controlling that property, we've had 3 tenant buyers. We've captured somewhere in the vicinity of about 6 figures in profit when we get cashed out as well. But here's the interesting thing. When I sat down with the seller, I asked them, what do you want to get out of this property? And the sellers basically said, we would love to walk away with $80,000 cash. I said, great. Now, mind you, they owed $135,000 on the property. I said, so if I guarantee $80,000 at cash, do we have a deal? And they said, absolutely. So the sale price on my contract simply said $80,000 cash at closing, meaning for 7 years, they've been paying that property down on their mortgage payment. That means my equity position is increased. And there are times where we do that, and we can combine that with rent credits too. So both those work. I like the mortgage buy down opportunity, and I think that's actually going to become a much greater negotiating tool going forward in this current climate.
That's almost like 2x amortization. Because
Yeah,
you're leveraging the
exactly.
sellers, you're leveraging the owner's mortgage position, and then
Right.
also creating rent credit. Plus, you got the tenant buyer on the other end. I mean, that's really good. So
Yeah.
one of the other concerns people have when I talk about lease options is, what if the owner files bankruptcy, refinances the house, tries to sell it right out from under me? And you mentioned there that you do a memorandum of option recorded. Is that a document that you can teach people pretty easily how to handle?
It is, and we do actually use that on every deal that we stay involved with. In that instance, it's simply a document, and it's not a very complicated document. It's 1 page long. It gets notarized and signed by not just the sellers, but myself, and we record that. That basically gives us the ability to not have the property sold out from under us. In most respects, what we're talking about is it clouds the title.
Right.
So that does not give them the ability to do anything like that, and we have that freedom. We also have some specific protections within our lease with option to purchase agreement that gives us the ability to not have them go ahead and get another loan on the property. We like to have mortgage authorization as well. So many times we will get that signed and notarized by the seller that gives us the right to talk to the bank and even make the payments directly, so we know that the payments are being made.
Yeah, that's a big one as well. You don't want that owner to go into foreclosure, for sure.
Right. Right.
Do you also, have you ever considered, or do you like to get a deed signed and put in escrow? Or set up a subject to deal if they start to default?
I haven't had the necessity to do that, but it is something that we will do in some deals. So instead of a lease option agreement or a lease with purchase option, what we'll do is we can do a contract for deed if
Right.
things are a little sketchy on the front end. Yeah.
Okay. All
Now,
right.
by the way, Jim, real quick when it comes to that, when we stay in the deal, there has to be equity in there for us to stay in the deal. So typically when we're looking for options, and this is a real critical point, we're not looking for distressed sellers or distressed properties.
Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit. Marketing for lease options. Are you looking for people that are becoming accidental landlords, or people that are in the military relocating and they can't handle extra debt? What's sort of your target?
Yeah, actually all the above. We are looking for sellers who need to sell, not want to sell.
Right.
And that
Oops, we're breaking up there a little, Jim. There you go.
I
You're
think
back.
I think I dropped out there. Let me try
You
that
did,
again.
you're good.
So we'd like to look for sellers that are motivated, who need to sell, not want to sell. And in that regard, one of the things that we are looking for is, even if they have 10 or 15 or 20% of equity, we can still capture some of that equity over a term, over the longer term. It's not going to be right up front by lowballing them and trying to beat them down on price. So that's one thing that we have going for us. The other kind of tool that we have in our toolbox is what we call a cooperative lease option, where we actually just wholesale the option to the tenant buyer, and we get paid one time and we're out. So if there's no ability to gain or capture equity, we will, if the seller still wants to sell and they're willing to wait for their equity, we'll wholesale that option agreement to a tenant buyer, get paid by the tenant buyer an assignment fee, and typically that's 3.5% or $5,000, whichever is greater, and then they make the payments directly to the seller, and we get paid one time. So those are really quick cash infusions into our business.
I like that. So you can wholesale lease options. I like it.
Absolutely.
So when you're talking to a seller, and what are some of the critical terms you're trying to negotiate? Like for me, when I've done them, like the length of the lease option is important. The
Yes.
longer I can get, the more confident I am I can do really well. How about yourself?
Yeah, I really, if I stay in the deal, I really don't like to do anything less than 3 years, preferably 5. There are times where I've asked for 10 and I got 8
Yes.
years on the term. And so I like the longer term deals. Some of those may not actually result in doing a lease option. They might actually result, like we talked earlier, about doing a contract for deed where the deed is in escrow until we meet the terms of the agreement. And I'm okay with that. Some sellers we talk to own their properties free and clear, and they're willing to do owner financing.
Yeah.
And I
Love
will do
that.
that all day.
Love owner financing.
I just talked to a seller yesterday afternoon. He actually has a duplex and he owns it free and clear. He's an older guy. He's got 13 properties
Nice.
and he's willing to start with this one. He said, I said to him that we would be willing to do a land contract as well. He goes, yeah, that would be fine with me. And he said, what kind of interest rate would you be willing to?
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit there. I'll give you a second. Oh, I think you're coming back.
I'm back. Sorry.
All right, good. So what kind of
And-
interest rate was the question, right?
Yeah, so I said, well, I'm willing to pay 5 to 5.5%. He said, wow, really? He was shocked by that because he does land contracts. He sells them at 4%. I
Wow.
said, no, we'd be willing to do that all day. And he was surprised. We're not paying 10% interest on these
Right.
deals. The other thing that gives you, if you do a 5% owner financing arrangement, and I know this is off the lease
No, it's
option
okay.
boat, but we can turn around and we can move that at a higher price on terms to another buyer and charge them a higher interest rate and do a wrap.
Yeah, I like that.
And we're doing those too. We love those. Do those over 10 years, you can make a ton of money. It's just amazing.
I'm buying one now with just triplex with 5% down and 6% interest, but it reminds me of an apartment complex I did years ago. I bought it for 5% down and like 6% interest, and then I sold it on a wrap to another investor for like 10% down and 8 or 10% interest. That was one of my favorite deals, just reselling that to another investor on a wrap. I wholesaled it, but also created like multiple income streams along the way. That's a great tip.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a wonderful technique. In fact, I think that's going to actually be a greater tool going forward with what we're looking at now. And we have historic low interest rates.
Right.
Some of the sellers that are selling, they're locked in at 4.5% or 4% or something. And if you do a wrap with something like that, the amount of interest spread is just tremendous.
Yep. A lot of different ways to make money with financing. And by learning just simple little controls like an option, what is it about an option that sort of scares people, do you think? Because I sometimes sit back and think, why don't more people use options to control properties? And I think it's just, maybe it's because they're used to buying properties on the MLS with a realtor and receiving a deed. I don't know what it is. What do you think?
There's probably a couple of factors that I've noticed with people who have that kind of fear factor. One would be they're just really unsure if they're willing to make the payment if something goes south with a tenant buyer.
Gotcha.
One of the things I did early on, I didn't have any money. And one of the things that I did early on is when I guaranteed the payments to the seller, it was subject to me getting a tenant buyer first.
Gotcha.
So on the agreement, we would actually put on there, payment begins upon sublet.
Mm-hmm.
And that freed me up to market the property early on and not have to worry about making a monthly payment until we brought a tenant buyer and they had a significant amount down. That's one of the things that's, I think, is a major fear factor. It was for me. Now, when I put a property under contract, if I don't have a tenant buyer in 30 or 45 days, something might be wrong with the deal. The property might have an issue. We talk about functional obsolescence and things like that. If you're not looking for really properties of what I call meet the sweet spot or the sweet zone, you will have trouble moving them. So for example, for me, I've got to have a 3-bed minimum with either a garage and a basement or both. The property can't be distressed. So those properties move very, very quickly. We just put a property under contract on Monday. I already have a tenant buyer interested. They have the down payment. They're coming to see it tomorrow. And so those kind of properties I know move very, very quickly. If you've got a 2-bed, 1-bath, you know, it's going to be months before you get a tenant buyer. So those kind of things make a distinction in how fast you can move. So making that payment, or when you make that payment again to the seller, is scary. The second one is the documentation. And once you get a little bit familiar with it, and it's not complicated, doing those paperwork, you know, processing and getting that done is the other scary part for a lot of people. So what I do is when I teach people in our course, we actually have a video. I have a video of me filling out every contract line by line and explaining it. That was a scary part for me, and I wanted to eliminate that for other people as well.
I like it. So what's the best website for our listeners to go connect with you on today, if they want to check out your
it's Lease Option. Sure, it's leaseoptioncoach.com.
Okay.
Leaseoptioncoach.com.
And you can click the link down below and connect right in there as well. It's no problem. You know, so that's great for beginners. I think it's also good for people looking to build a rental portfolio with less risk. I also like doing these things inside of self-directed IRAs. Think about it, because you can do sandwich leasing, you can create the option, it's the equity for the future, all of it without debt financing. And without debt financing, you don't have any issues with unrelated business income tax. And you can really create a lot of wealth tax-free using options inside self-directed IRAs. These are easy deals to do, I think, once you know how to do them. Do you agree, Jim?
They are. In fact, I go so far as to say they're the easiest deals that you can do. They're the fastest way to a check as well. I've got students that are doing deals in 20 to 25 days, and they're getting paychecks very, very quickly. I just had a student we helped 2 weeks ago, got their first paycheck. They made $8,000 in about 14 or 15 days on a property. It was remarkable. We're going to do a video with her and her husband, and it's just a tremendous way to start off quickly. You mentioned doing these deals in IRAs. That's really one of the things that I love doing as well. We're stacking them in our IRA. I'm a little bit old, Jim. I don't know about you, but I'm going to be 59 and a half in about 3 years.
I'm a little behind.
So I want to do everything I can to get them. What's that?
I'm a little behind that, but it's coming quick, believe me. So yeah, I like doing them in IRAs as well. Think about that, guys, as Jim comes back here. But you can create tax-free wealth in a self-directed IRA and stick these in there. They're so easy to do.
Yeah, sorry, I got disconnected there again. Things are spotty right now, but we have even where we've taken this, and this is really interesting. So we may have had a sandwich lease option outside of our IRA, outside of a Roth, for example. And the seller wants to renegotiate as we get closer to the term. Maybe it's 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road. We've got a tenant buyer that's really close and they want to do a deal. One that we recently did was I agreed to give them the payment that I owed them. So in this case, in rural Michigan, a very typical deal, it's a $100,000 house, 3-bed, 2-bath, all fixed up, very nice. I owed the seller about $58,000 on that property. So there was a nice amount of equity left. They agreed for me to give them an amount down. And in this case, I had my IRA give them $5,000 down. The balance we did on a lease purchase in the IRA. So what we did was we dissolved the option agreement outside the IRA. Right. We drafted new documentation in the IRA. And when that property cashed out, that $40,000 went into my Roth tax-free.
Oh, I like that. Okay, good. Good way to juice up your Roth, which is always a good thing.
Yeah.
So everyone can go to leaseoptioncoach.com and connect with Jim in social media as well and check out his YouTube channel. Is it Lease Option Coach in YouTube as well?
Yeah, in fact, there's a link from our website there. I'm going to be getting some additional videos uploaded where we're going to take little segments of these kind of deals,
Love it.
and we're going to explain them to people on YouTube, 5, 7, 8-minute videos. And so we're in the process of working on that right now.
And Jim's coming to Dealmaker 2021 in February in Richmond, so I'm really looking forward to doing that. I do think it's the perfect, like you said, it is the perfect storm for options. And options are powerful little leverage devices that are not hard to use, that everybody should be out doing some options. Guys, create these paydays, whether you need money quickly or whether you're in the wealth building mode. Actually, options in this exact strategy works for both, doesn't it? So Jim, I think I'm losing you again.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Good. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and conclude. Jim, it's nice to connect with you, a man with the same core values, the same background as far as being a recovering engineer. We got out of corporate America at the same time, and I look forward to meeting you in person next February.
Me too, Jim. I look forward to it. Thank you so much for having me, and we'll plan on seeing you in February, Lord willing.
And really, thanks for making an impact. You've helped a lot of people, and people need to connect with you and go to leaseoptioncoach.com because these are easy deals to make. You can make them right now in the middle of 2020 here and really set up the future for your family the way that you need to. Jim, thank you very much.
Absolutely.